So when we think about getting started with music theory on guitar, sometimes we may feel overwhelmed. So many topics, so many subjects, we simply don't know where to start from. And if we check out resources online, often we get things like learn the circle of fifths or things like that, which are cool, yes, but definitely not appropriate to a complete beginner. So in this lesson, guys, I want to give you my list of topics to make sure that you cover in the first 1 or 2 months of playing guitar. Or if you already play guitar but you never got into music theory, these are the topics to start from. And if you stick with me till the end of the video, I will also give you a list of topics that you shouldn't check out. So a list of topics that are too advanced for you right now and you shouldn't bother with them just yet. Now let's start simple. The first thing to know really well is the names of the opening strings, okay? Obviously you start from the top to the bottom and you go E, A, D, G, B, E. There are many sayings that you can find online to remember them, but after a few times that you tune your guitar with one of those click tuners that shows you the name of the open string that you are tuning, you will simply learn them this way. So E, A, D, G, B, E to get started. Next is obviously going to be the music alphabet, so understanding which letters and how many letters we actually use in music. And we use only 7 letters: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So essentially the first 7 letters of the alphabet. Together with them, we also use accidentals, so essentially the sharps and the flats that you may have seen next to one of these letters. Now, if you combine the 7 letters of the music alphabet with the 5 accidentals that we have, you get how many notes there are in total, which is 12. 7 natural notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and 5 accidentals in between them. 12 notes is the number that you have to remember. The 2 places where you don't find a sharp or a flat in between the letters is between the letters B and C and between the letters E and F. So if you remember to be or not to be in English, you will remember B and E as the 2 letters after which you don't find a sharp. Then you have to learn the difference between a note and a chord. So a note is a single sound that you play on a single string, therefore, and a chord is when you play more notes simultaneously, like when you do this. Sometimes you may hear people referring to the difference between a note and a chord as the difference between melodies, so single notes make melodies, and harmony. Harmony is when you play chords. So everything that has to do with chords is harmony. Everything that has to do with single note is melody. Next on your list, you should have units. You should have intervals. So the minimum unit that you can find between any note is a semitone or half step. 2 semitones make a tone or a whole step. Each fret of the guitar is a semitone or a half step. So if you get any note and you want to figure out the distance with the next note that you play, simply count how many frets you have in between, and that's going to be the number of semitones or half steps between those 2 notes. Now, that distance is what in music we call an interval. So an interval is just the distance in terms of half steps or whole steps between 2 notes. Now, when you combine those 12 notes, the 7 letters and the 5 accidentals, you get those 12 notes in a scale which we call the chromatic scale, which has a distance of 1 semitone, so the smallest unit that we mentioned, and you combine them in this chromatic scale, which you can simply play from whatever note, whatever fret you like on the guitar, simply by moving half step or a semitone between each note. This is a great way to start naming these notes, and you will also figure out that when you get to the fret number 12, you will actually find the same note as the open string where you started from, simply 1 octave higher. Once you are familiar with these subjects that we mentioned, move into understanding what a scale is. A scale is a particular series of single notes, so it refers to melody and not harmony, that follow specific intervals. What makes a scale is that series of intervals that you can apply starting from any note. For example, one of these series of intervals that you will learn will be whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, which is what it makes a major scale. If you start from C, you will follow those intervals and you will get the C major scale. But if you apply these intervals starting from another note, you will get a different scale, a different major scale, applying, like I said, the same series of intervals, and you can easily play the D major scale, and so on and so forth. Last but not least, and this is one of the most important things, make sure that you start spending some time naming the notes that you play on the fretboard of the guitar. You can start from the open strings. There are several methods to do that. You can count them through the chromatic scale if you like, but you should figure out from the very beginning at least a few names of the notes that you play more often. So if that is a melody, maybe stop on those notes and ask yourself, what notes am I actually playing? Don't call them fret 3 on the second string, fret 5 on the second string, and so on and so forth. They're not numbers, they're notes. Make sure you call them D, E, F, and so on and so forth. And if you start doing this as soon as possible, at some point, I promise, you won't look at the guitar as a bunch of numbers and frets where you don't even know the names of what you're playing. You will actually look at them as actual notes that you can move, that you can find elsewhere. You will start understanding how the octaves really work, what is the range of the guitar, and a few other interesting things, including naming the notes within the chords. So a chord is made by several notes, you should be able to name all of the notes that make every chord you play. At first you will be slow, you train yourself and you will become quicker and quicker. But make sure that you name the notes that you're playing, that's really important. Like I said guys, these are my top topics or subjects that you should explore when you start getting into music theory on guitar. Now what are other subjects, other topics that you may find in other videos, you may find in other online resources that I personally, from my own experience and the experience that I have with lots of students across the years, I wouldn't recommend you to get into just yet until you master every single subject that we mentioned in this video. Well, first of all, don't worry about the circle of fifths. It is a fantastic tool, very helpful for a lot of things, but don't worry about it just yet. There are so many other things to learn before you get into the circle of fifths. You shouldn't also worry about how to form chords, so what degrees you find in major and minor triads, seventh chords and things like that. They are super important. I would suggest you to move into that as soon as you feel comfortable with the other subjects that we mentioned, but you shouldn't bother with them until you learn everything we said today. And equally, you shouldn't worry about figuring out keys just yet, or even just understand what a key is, to be honest. And also, don't worry about understanding the caged system when you get started. This is both when you get started getting into music theory, but also when you start playing the guitar. Learn as many chord positions as you can when you start, and even if you've been playing for a few months, or I would say even for a year or two, just learn as many chords as you can. Don't worry about how you can move them and what shape of the cage system they belong to. There are so many incredible guitarists that simply don't use the cage system. I've personally learned the cage system really late. I've used really difficult chords without even understanding how the cage system really worked, and it's fine. You can play beautifully and you don't really need it. If you want to get into the cage system, definitely do it, but later on. Right guys, so hopefully this lesson was helpful to understanding how you can map the fretboard and how you can potentially learn the really important music theory subjects on guitar. If you'd like me to give you the next steps once you master these that we talked about today in this video, just let me know in the comments below, and I can make a series of this, or at least show you a part 2 where you can spend the next few weeks or months.